We're wearing size 23 shoes and kicking rats right in their rectums. That either means we're going full Shaq Fu on a heavy dose of DMT, or we're playing Battletoads on this episode of Doki Doki Game Club. Game Club. Hello and welcome to Doki Doki Game Club, a retro video game podcast. I am your host, Brandon Fincher, and I am joined today by the real Zitz, Pimple and Rash, Frank Martin.
Yes.
Brian Grogan.
All right.
And Mr. Joseph Luster.
Oh, yeah.
On Doki Doki Game Club, we each take a turn choosing a particular title from video game history, and we announce the selection online so everyone can play along at home. From there, we have 2 weeks to spin with the title, at which point we reconvene to dig into the ins and outs of the selection. Today's pick was made by Frank, and that title is Battletoads for the arcade. Battletoads was developed by Rare, published by Electronic Arts, and released in arcades in 1994. Known as Super Battletoads in Japan, it was the final entry in the Battletoads franchise. It didn't receive a console release until 2015's Rare Replay Collection on Xbox One. All right, my toady dudes.
Hey now.
Hey.
Good to hear your voices again. Welcome to another episode of DDGC. And we're here to talk today about a little game called Battletoads. And I want to know each and every one of your individual experiences with the franchise of Battletoads.
Ooh.
Yeah. We're going to reach back here because I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Battletoads is, amongst enthusiasts of classic video games, a sort of, what's the word I'm looking for here? It's integrated into the pop culture of this niche retro gamer, category. Whether it be for the, obviously the NES game, I think probably reigns supreme in terms of, and then the hierarchy of importance with this franchise.
Yeah.
And it's probably I think there's like some meme culture thing that maybe Frank can elaborate on.
Yeah.
But yeah, when did you first become aware of Battletoads? And let's go from there.
My first foray in Battletoads happened when I was probably in my maybe 10 or 11 years old, and I used to rent it for the SNES, the Super NES version.
Okay.
And then I played the NES ones and later on in life, and they had one with the Double Dragons as well that I played a little bit. So.
Sure. Yeah. What was the name of the original Super Nintendo Battletoads? Did it have a fancy name, or was it just called Battletoads?
I think it was just Battletoads.
I think it had a subtitle
Something
or a different
Canyon?
name.
My instinct is always to assume that everything that came out for the Super Nintendo is called Super something.
Yeah, it's not Super.
Oh, it was
Battletoads
Battletoads and Battle Maniacs.
Yes, that's what it was.
Aha, that's where we're getting at. Okay.
Yeah. Which is a great title.
All right, then. It is a good title. Yeah, like when you can do a thing inside of a thing, I think in my opinion, it's a pretty good title. Yeah. Brian, how about you? What is your history of Battletoads?
Well, really, when I was a kid, I saw the Nintendo Power. I think it was pushed pretty heavily there.
Oh, yeah.
It had a cover story.
Cover story, centerfold poster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. But as it turns out, by some unhappy accident, I didn't get it. Nobody that I knew got it.
Okay.
Wow.
So it was really kind of adulthood that I came to it. I haven't played it particularly too much. I remember, it became notorious for difficulty at that point, and I just kind of couldn't get my head around am I going to really play through this and play all the way through. And I haven't yet.
How about you, Joseph?
I was pretty obsessed with Battletoads because one of my one of the only requisites for like entertainment for me as a child is that it had to be like a creature with some degree of attitude.
Oh yeah.
and that was pretty much and I was obsessed with Ninja Turtles, and like I used to make rip-off comics like starring like hamsters. I made a Battletoads rip-off comic called Toad Force when I was like
All right.
10 or 11 years old.
Now, I know from many years of friendship with you that you don't throw anything away. Everything that you've ever owned in your life, it lives in a basement in Louisville, Kentucky. Yep. And I have to assume that if you don't currently possess scans of that comic book, that it might be accessible at some point. Can you scan this image so for the fans at home?
I'm glad to let you know that I actually uploaded it today on Twitter at Moldylocks. So please go read my, I believe it's like 10-page Battletoads. Toad Force registered trademark. The subtitle is The Totally Tubular Toads. and please believe that I credit it's Joseph Luster's Toad Force. So not to be confused with anyone else's.
I heard that guy's an auteur.
Yeah, apparently. So I played the NES game a ton as a kid, and of course I never got past the jet bike or hover bike level that is very notorious.
Right.
I don't think I played past that till I was much, much older, but please believe I loved playing the first 3 levels of that game.
Yeah, it's weird for me with Battletoads. I was totally aware of it from the get-go. The time frame that it came out in, and as Brian already mentioned, the Nintendo Power coverage of that game was massive. And I want to say that I pulled that centerfold poster out and had it on my bedroom wall for many a year. Same thing though, I couldn't even tell you if I got to the battle bike or whatever the bike stage, but it was a game that I was just always aware of. And it's funny, also a massive Ninja Turtles fan. For whatever reason, I never gave a second thought to that being like a ripoff of the other. And it was before
I think it was just one of those that time period was so full of just responses to Ninja Turtles. Like,
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Even I consider, stuff to me like anything with an animal and a team of animals was basically like that. Even Bucky O'Hare.
I was just thinking Bucky O'Hare. Yeah, that's weird. And then as an adult with a sort of critical eye, Bucky O'Hare is really not anything like Ninja Turtles.
No, not at all.
Neither the way that they look nor their shapes or
it's more like a sci-fi pulp kind of send off.
Yeah.
Because the 90s were all about the animal human hybrid thing. I don't know.
A trend in popular culture that maybe paved way for the furries of the world.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, absolutely, dude. I mean, that and Robin Hood by Disney.
Yeah.
All that stuff.
And
just
Space Jam.
Yeah. All the furries. Well, that's more for is there like a subset of furries that's only into monsters? Because that would be more like the Space Jam fans.
God, I hope not, because I feel like we might have just lost you to that kinky subculture.
Bye, guys. Bye.
We're speaking of kinky subcultures. Earlier in the week, Joseph couldn't help but draw a comparison to an artist that I don't know anything about beyond the one image that you shared with us in the group chat. Which
Did you look up more?
Tom of Finland. No, I haven't had any time to look up more. But yeah, really weird that as an adult. And now I can't stop thinking about Battletoads as being this sort of homoerotic thing.
I think especially this arcade game. This arcade game is extremely homoerotically designed. Just because all the characters wear these mesh see-through shirts, kind of, and leather jackets. There's lots of leather daddy rats in this game.
And it's a weird thing. I think that with as a sort of outsider to homosexual culture, but there's a lot of it on TV and movies and stuff these days. One thing that I also sort of drew a parallel with after you mentioned that was that the Dark Queen looks like a drag queen. She's really got very big hair and makeup and this kind of outfit. I wonder.
Have you ever seen the cartoon Rock and Roll?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It kind of looks like a Ralph Bakshi thing, right?
Yeah. I can also see a little bit of that in Battletoads arcade. I don't know. It's just this weird mashup of kind of gay erotica and 90s feature film cartoons.
Yeah. Well, I mean, before we dive into the game itself, is there anything else about the history of Battletoads that you guys wanted to touch on? I mean, how deeply did the fandom go as kids? Like, did you devour all the other previous video games?
Well, for me personally, it's very interesting because I played only the Super Nintendo one, and I remember like having such a hard time with the bike level and having to like invite some friends over to try to co-op with me to try to fix it, but like just it didn't work because having two people fail is just as bad as one person failing. But
if not worse, because you dragged that poor friend over.
Yeah, exactly. Is it at least possible in the Super Nintendo? Yeah. Is it at least possible in the Super Nintendo one, unlike the NES one? Or it's impossible to complete with two players?
It's pretty much impossible, yeah. I think it's like pretty much carbon copy of the NES one, like pretty close.
Okay, I was going to ask if there was overlap like that.
Yeah, they're very weird. Similar, at least at that level. But when I grew up, I love Battletoads. Like I remember making custom sounds for my computer that were all like Battletoads, like sound effects and like the music when it started up and stuff like that. Like I loved it. And
that's legit.
Oh yeah, I used to be big into it because I used to be like everyone else into Ninja Turtles and stuff like that, and indirectly getting into Battletoads. But I remember finding about the NES one, the Genesis one, and then the arcade one, and then I was never able to play the arcade one until this episode. I never played it before, so it was kind of like that's the reason why I picked it, because I was really wanted to try something that I always wanted to and never had the time to do it. So
yeah, that's interesting to me, at least as your friend, to find out about your history with Battletoads, because oftentimes we talk about the selections that we're going to make between each other, like leading up to the the selection or the announcement on the podcast. And yeah, at no point in the several years of knowing you have you mentioned anything about Battletoads. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't wear it on my sleeve. I don't have like a Battletoads tattoo.
Close to his chest.
I think you need to change that.
With a sleeve tattoo, a full sleeve.
Full sleeve.
Whole lot of green on that arm.
Yeah, and the other arm is just the queen, just a whole
and her rodent Reich and
I will say one thing, having played the NES game so much growing up, I always wanted, like I said, the first two stages are so fun to me, and after that it all goes downhill. And I always thought it was, man, if only this was just a straight beat 'em up, and here we are, Battletoads the arcade game, a straight beat 'em up.
Yeah, pretty much.
And maybe once we get into talking about the deeper parts of the game, we can kind of compare and contrast some of your experiences with what you thought of the arcade style game versus the more console based beat 'em up. I don't know, Joseph. Is this a series that you stuck with through the years? Have you played the Super Nintendo ones? Because I'm sitting here thinking myself, and I'm like, man, I definitely remember Double Dragon or Battletoads and Double Dragon, but I don't know. I don't think I played too many of these games, to be honest with you.
I didn't play the Super Nintendo one that much because I never had it growing up, but I do still have a copy at home of Battletoads and Double Dragon, and that's a game all
the NES one or the SNES one?
The on Genesis.
Oh, the Genesis one.
Even better. A console, in my opinion, that it should be an appropriate home for an attitude-laden Battletoad trio.
Oh, dude, that's such a Genesis game.
Speaking of Genesis games, I was reading this on the Wikipedia like two minutes ago. Apparently, the SNES version of Battletoads was ported to the Sega Master System exclusively in Brazil.
Weird.
Oh, weird. Yeah, I don't know. You occasionally over the years, I've heard some weird things about exclusive Brazilian releases for video games. So that's
because
they've got a big
the Genesis version of like the base game is more around the arcade game, if I remember correctly. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I don't remember.
Well, someday we'll have to play all of them.
Yeah.
Okay, well, unless anyone else has anything historical to add about Battletoads, I'd say it's time for the Back of the Box.
Battletoads, a 7-level frenzy across a solar system featuring Zitz, Rash, and Pimple, the 3 wartiest heroes, assume the role of these gorgeous green heroes as they travel the galaxy in search for the evil, sultry Dark Queen and her legion of evil minions. While pounding the pork, you'll do battle with grim gonads, scarfing SWAT rats, swarms of scammies, rabid Rudolph, and many other fiendish foes. Watch out! Only the bravest of players will be able to control their Toad with the awesome arsenal of moves. After all, where the brain power fails, brute force prevails. Don't miss out. Put some green in your cash box.
All right, so hopefully everyone's stuffed their cash boxes full of green and is ready to hear in greater detail about this little beat 'em up called Battletoads. So Frank, lay it on us. What is your summary of Battletoads for the arcade?
What if you took every Battletoad game, you put it together, and you like crank everything down or up to 11, and then you just have violence and gore and unadulterated rats?
So many rats.
a lot, probably all the rats.
All the
if I
rats.
had to take a guess. Yeah, there's a lot of rats in there. Okay, so we got Battletoads, the arcade game. It is, I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, a traditional beat 'em up.
Yeah. A coin gobbling beat 'em up.
It's a quarter cruncher for sure.
It is
Yeah.
a quarter cruncher.
Munching.
Since we're on the topic of that, on spending money, obviously, I mean, I've never played this game in the arcade. I'm gonna.
Has anybody seen the arcade game?
I've never seen
I've seen
it in person,
pictures.
no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, me neither.
I wish that there was a resource on the World Wide Web that allowed you to track the number of sold units for arcade machines.
Yeah.
That would be just something nice to look at.
I'd love to see the number of active units right now so I can go find one.
That's some next level
Totally.
like StarNet AI
GPS
stuff right
location.
Yeah.
You need neural networks on that.
I'm
It's funny,
surprised. I was going to say, I'm surprised it hasn't been at MagFest, to be honest with you.
It must just be rare as could be. I mean,
Yeah.
and a lot of the stuff that's at MagFest is pretty standard fare.
Sure.
And that thing's just going to get pulverized,
Yeah.
at a given MagFest. But speaking of the arcade machine, our very own Mr. Joseph Lester recently went to Japan for a business trip for what was it, for Otaku USA or
For Crunchyroll.
Crunchyroll.
Yep.
And so you went there, and I had made the joke of you needed to find it in an arcade and get yourself a Yakuza or two, and beat your way through the game. And then after I made that post, I was like, there's nothing Japanese about this game.
No.
It's like the least Japanese game in the world.
It really is. Like, it just screams America in a way that you would assume that only the Japanese would be able to do.
Yeah.
Like they have this sort of parody up to 11. This game needed like some BMX bikes, and
But funny enough, isn't most of the dev team all British as well? If I'm not mistaken, Rare.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's the thing then. Like, maybe that's how. Because I just feel like America is incapable of properly representing America
Itself.
like itself, like in a funny way.
Yeah. In a very like introverted kind of way, like looking at itself in a magnifying glass kind of way.
Yeah.
This is like Battletoads, but like writ large on a blimp. It's just it's the most Battletoads, the most like America excess kind of game, which is why it's funny that it comes from Rare. But it's just like, I wish I had come across this game in arcades. I wish they'd had it in Japan. They only had like the newest, slickest arcade machines there, so there was no Battletoads to be found.
I'm wondering if they had carte blanche with like making this game, and like maybe the console versions, they were a little bit too pulled back because of like.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
When you said cranked up, I was like, this is not in people's homes anymore. This is out, and the people's parents aren't watching over their shoulders inside the arcades.
Because the number
from
one,
what I understand, that was the theory behind the design of this game, is just that they could do what they couldn't do at home.
Okay.
The first thing that comes to mind is just the blood. Like there's no blood in the other versions, right? But like there's pixel splashes of blood, and it's great.
There were people's heads getting ripped off.
Yeah.
It also came out at a point where we had a couple of Battletoads games, and I think chronologically, I really should have done my research about this, but we were dealing with, so it was 94, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And 94. So, at 94, we had Mortal Kombat. And I would argue that with Battletoads for the NES, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the first game of the series.
Yeah, that's the first
obviously an NES game, you've got some, you got some Nintendo of Japan hurdles to overcome in terms of content. But yes, I think enough time had gone by where they were like, oh, okay, well, let's, we can do what we want because it's an arcade game and we don't really have anyone like lording over us about that sort of thing. And then
it seems kind of like do or die in that regard, because like you had probably already had the failed cartoon pilot.
Yeah.
Oh, it was like kind of like the last ditch effort for the Battletoads franchise. And there's like, obviously I'm just like projecting here, but they're just like, screw it. We can do whatever we want here. This is probably, it's either going to become, extend the franchise or not.
Yeah. Did you happen to notice when you discovered that Battletoads pilot? And was that a thing you found today?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. See, for some reason, it felt familiar, and it's probably because it rips off Ninja Turtles and whatever. But I don't have any recollection of having seen that or even heard about the Battletoads cartoon before. But if you're listening to this, and I have to assume that if you're still listening to this, you must have a thing for Battletoads, at least a passing familiarity with it. Watch that cartoon because it's surprisingly good. Like the story is interesting. It's a goofy 90s over-the-top cartoon, but there's some stuff where I revisit these animated series, or like I watch some things that like I only have like the foggiest recollection of, and I watch it and it's just like, man, this is like a bad 80s cartoon or like a bad early 90s cartoon. But watch that now. And I was like, I mean, the story makes sense. The characters are funny. There's a ton of jokes. It's set in Oxnard, California, which people that don't know, I don't know anything about Oxnard. I've never been there before. My only association with Oxnard is there's a band that I like called Nails. And Nails, as the name would imply, is heavy and hard as hell. Yeah. And so I'd like to imagine like the Battletoads living in the same place that Nails, the band, lives at, is made me laugh while I was watching.
Do you think they chose Oxnard because it kind of has like that gnarly kind of like...
Oh, totally. It sounds very
also
surfery.
Because aren't there like kind of ox-like enemies in these games, and they have nards?
That too.
So.
That's true.
Yeah. We had the gonads in the back of the box. So
I'm reading up on the TV show right now. I didn't know it was produced by Dick. Entertainment.
Deke, you mean?
In Canada.
Yeah, that's what he said. Yeah, it's a Canadian misinterpretation.
We're gonna have to censor that now.
So I guess Frank, since you sound to be the one that's most familiar with most of the Battletoads games, perhaps you can describe to us how this Battletoads for the arcade distances itself, or how does it stand out against the other Battletoads games in the series? Like it's particularly its console brethren.
Yeah, well, the other ones kind of have a beat 'em up kind of feel to it, but they're not really. They're more like actiony kind of games, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could still kind of slot it as a beat 'em up, but this one is just straight up beat 'em up. It's like has the what I really liked about Battletoads when I first played it when I was younger is the fact that there's all these weapons that you can grab, and then also the abilities that you get when you kill an enemy, I guess. So for anybody who hasn't played a Battletoads, basically when you kill an enemy, you have a part of your body, or the Battletoads part of the body, it like turns into a weapon. So for example, like Pimple in Battletoads on the Super NES, when he headbutts he gets like goat horns, like these ram horns and stuff like that. So like in the arcade game, he has a big football helmet, which is really cool.
Yeah, like the shoulder pads and everything.
Yeah, and I find,
is that really just when you kill an enemy, or is that just like ending a combo?
It's kind of like an into a combo.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I misunderstood him too, Brian. I thought that he meant like it was an accumulated point kind of a thing.
Usually every time you kill an enemy, it's at the end of a combo anyways, unless it's one of the harder enemies. But in the arcade version, it took it like to an extra level, because and it was more PG, I guess. The original ones, it was like goat horns or like a hammer or something like that. But this one is like, one is a drill, and there's like like blood, and one is like his foot turns into an axe and like cuts the guy.
That's Rash, right?
Yeah,
Rash does that with the kick.
One of them turns into like a buzzsaw.
Yeah. There's a buzzsaw. There's
I think that's Zitz that does that.
In the older one, it was more like Looney Tunes style, or where it's just like an anvil smashing down on someone and bloodless violence. This is definitely like itchy and scratchy.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, because like I'm watching actually a level from the arcade game. So in the Super NES version, the level that's like goes top down, where you're like a slowly kind of like a kind of like just a track. You just go downwards. You could swing yourself off a wall, but you would turn into a kind of like an anvil, like a weight. But I'm watching a Zitz playthrough, and he turns into like a ball full of spikes, and then he hits into things, and just like blood is just flashing all over the place. It's great. Like it's.
I think like the attention to detail is what makes this arcade game interesting too to me. Is I'm a sucker for any kind of little things going on in the background or with the characters or animation. And there's a lot of it. I mean, there's like even just pointless stuff where you'll walk past and you'll be in a corridor and you'll walk past a door and it'll open and a rat will be taking a dump.
There's that.
Level 3 is the best because that's also the level where you fight the big rats that you grab them by the basically.
Oh my, you really do. It's actually
General Vermin, I think.
It's very explicit.
The nut punch.
It is. And they're massive. Like they're these giant abobo size rats.
Huge,
Huge. Yeah.
And then you just grab them by the junk and you just slap them around.
And like you visibly grab their junk and punch it on the head.
Like they're not like faking it, and it's not like sometimes it's implied in video games or something like that. No, like you get a handful of genitalia and then you punch it to death. And
that's what I mean. Like I'm sure they could have. I'm sure on like the first draft of Battletoads they wanted to do it on the NES, but then they were probably oh no, we can't do that.
Well, they didn't have the technology to show the handful.
They didn't have the pixels.
I would love to. I would love to know with Rare if like the history of making Battletoads. I feel I'm a big fan of like documentaries about things getting made.
Yeah.
And I feel like that would be a really entertaining.
There's a smallish Battletoads documentary that came out because they're in a new fighting game, Killer Instinct. They're in the new one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then I think for the Rare 25th anniversary or whatever collection that came out on Xbox, there's like a little vignettes about every game that came out, and there's one on Battletoads, and they talk about like,
oh, cool.
Yeah, I think Dave Wise is there, and he's talking about how he made the music and stuff like that. It's really
speaking of which, Mr. Wise also wrote the pilot episode.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, multi-talented guy, huh?
Yeah, if you don't know who David Wise is, he's Rare's like in-house music guy. Like he did a bunch of stuff. Like
I gotta wonder if he didn't have his finger in some other pies besides just the music, because I mean that seems like a really strange thing to just turn over to a soundtrack guy. Like, I mean, unless he just completely ended up adopting the franchise over the year.
Wait a second here. I'm reading up on this David Wise guy. I don't think it's the same guy.
Really?
Oh, what?
That's a wild coincidence then.
Because this guy wrote he wrote comics for Ninja Turtles. He wrote.
Okay.
He wrote.
Oh, wow! What a weird coincidence.
Yeah,
huh?
That's so weird.
He wrote a bunch of Ninja Turtles. He wrote some Transformers. He wrote Buck Rogers, Wonder Woman, He-Man.
Wow.
Star Trek: The Animated Series.
Couple of wise guys here we're talking about.
I was so happy that it was going to be the same David Wise.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Should have cleared that up. Not that guy. Like in parentheses during the credits. Yeah.
Bummer. Oh well.
Yeah. Well,
that's still a crazy coincidence.
Oh yeah,
it really is.
Yeah.
I'm glad we clarified it though. We didn't leave this episode with a bunch of misinformation as we sometimes do.
And apparently
it's not wrong. David Wise did write the show.
That's true.
It's true. Yeah.
Right.
Apparently there's a Tiger Electronics Battletoads game as well. I'd like to get my hands on that. That'd be fun.
Oh yeah, I never played that one before.
No, I never even see it.
Yeah, it's definitely not a thing I would probably enjoy much these days. Yeah. But there's a certain nostalgia for that stuff.
I wonder if there's Tiger Electronics emulators out there. We can do.
Oh yeah,
there
MAME.
Absolutely is.
Yeah, MAME.
Well, not only MAME, but wasn't there something on archive.org recently that like made it playable through the browser?
Oh, really?
Yeah, you play every
Tiger
game basically.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So it's still considered MAME.
Yep.
That's cool.
That's really cool.
I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah, that's a good way to kill some time.
Yeah, some little LCD screen games.
Yeah. So to pull us back into the talk of beat 'em ups here, what do you think sets Battletoads apart from other beat 'em ups? Because that is as far as arcades go, I mean, you've got shooters, you've got beat 'em ups. I mean, you've got fighting games and things that kind of came and maintained popularity over the years. But when I think of my time spent in arcades, man, it was definitely playing beat 'em ups and playing shooters. And so I'm just curious if you guys, like, having played through Battletoads now, have some sort of takeaway from what makes it work as a beat 'em up in the context of other beat 'em ups.
Well, I think, like one of the things I go to whenever I fire up MAME is just I want to play all the beat 'em ups that I haven't experienced before, because it's one of my favorite. It's just one of my favorite genres, especially if you get to play it with a friend.
Yeah,
definitely.
Like especially finding the hidden gems. Like if you've ever played like Punisher, is an awesome one that you might not have seen in actual arcades ever. But I think it's pretty standard for a beat 'em up to kind of aim to top itself as you progress through the game, like more and more ridiculous. So Battletoads does that, and that's fine. But I think what really separates it is just kind of how ridiculous like the characters and like the action is compared to your average, like brawly dude beat 'em up.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel personally that like all beat 'em ups tend to have like a gimmick, and oftentimes the more successful ones are the ones with the better gimmicks.
Yeah.
And the first thing that comes to mind, and probably my favorite beat 'em up, and I would love to maybe do an episode about this, is the Dungeons and Dragons series that Capcom put out. I mean, those are fantastic because they have like a leveling system, and there's like shops, and you can buy things, and it's as close an approximation to playing D&D under the banner of a beat 'em up as you can get.
And every character kind of has a different play style. It's really cool. Yeah.
Maybe we'll get around to that at some point. But I think of other stuff. Ninja Turtles, like obviously a lot of it lives and breathes in the details. Like you mentioned, like the rat taking a dump in the in the bathroom, and The Simpsons. Arguably the most popular beat 'em up. That's another thing where it's just there's so many characters crammed in there. So, and with something like Battletoads, where like, I mean, you had a popular game franchise and you had a fan base for it, but they didn't really like excel in characters. You had the Dark Queen, and then everything else was just like her monstrous minions.
Yeah.
So it didn't really have that, but I definitely feel like the combat in this game outdoes a lot of the other beat 'em ups in that regard. Does anyone have any sort of comments on the specifics of this as a beat 'em up?
I don't know. It's pretty common fare when it comes to it, I guess. There's nothing that doesn't they hit every checkbox, I guess, basically is what I'm trying to say. And then they zest it up with their own flair, which is like this cartoony but now very gory kind of way of doing things. And I felt like the other versions had more of a, like, they very sexualized the queen. This one, you don't see her very much, I guess, maybe.
Yeah.
But when you do see her, you see her.
Yeah.
She has her hip well out.
Yeah. Because in the Super Nintendo version, anyways, the one that I played the most, there was like these cutscenes after every level, and like you would have like the rat. I don't remember his name, like the doctor, who's like the I guess the splinter of the group.
Professor T. Bird.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's not a rat. He's a bird.
Oh yeah, sorry. I was thinking of Splinter. And,
an easy mistake considering this game is inundated with rats.
Yeah. So he's not even in the arcade game as far as I know. Like maybe he's in like some demo or maybe, but I don't know.
And so we're talking about characters now, and having watched that pilot episode of that cartoon today, and it being the thing of Battletoads lore that is most fresh in my mind, as I was watching it, I found myself going, man, did the NES game or the Super Nintendo game like have this much story in it? Like, is the teenager thing exclusive to the cartoon?
It's only exclusive to the cartoon, yeah.
Okay, so the Battletoads are just these radical intergalactic toad dudes, right?
Yeah, as far as I know, they have kind of like a backstory where they were all scientists or something, and then they all transformed into these toads for whatever reason. Like,
okay.
I don't know.
Because they had to.
Because I think it was like a experiment gone awry or something. I don't know.
Like, watch that cartoon. Like, I'm
I
serious.
will.
Like,
I will.
It's funny, and like the idea. I mean, as Joseph mentioned, like if we would have discovered this in the early '90s, God, we would have been huge fans of it. And it's kind of.
I would have bought every toy. It actually breaks my heart that there's sliding doors and everything. There's another universe where this exists, and it ran for like 60 episodes. So I'm sad that we don't live there.
I'm wondering if it just wasn't well syndicated, and we never were able to see it. So therefore,
I don't think it got past the pilot.
Yeah, no. No. Yeah, they just made the pilot.
You can't do syndication without
yeah.
I mean, you need like a certain number of episodes of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of at the end of the road. But yeah, I don't know. Like obviously the right people didn't see it. It's kind of like I don't want to get off on a tangent here about cartoons, but do you guys remember like the X-Men cartoon before the series became a series?
Yeah.
Pride of the X-Men?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, with like Kitty Pryde and Colossus was in it, and yeah. And so I remember getting my hands on that as a kid and getting a copy of it on VHS, and like they manufactured it and put it out, and you could, it wasn't too hard to get your hands on, and loving the hell out of it. And then and just being really disappointed that we had no X-Men cartoon for years and years, and then finally the Fox one came out. And
yeah,
it was a whole nother
I love Pride of the X-Men. I wore that VHS tape out. X-Men,
warts and all.
X-Men.
Oh yeah, the theme song's fantastic. It's super Japanese looking in a way that like G.I. Joe looked real Japanese. Like as an adult, when you like revisit G.I. Joe, it's like, oh yeah, obviously that was a Japanese staff.
I still quote Juggernaut's "Dear stepbrother."
Yeah, no, that's good. And the you gotta love Australian Wolverine.
Yeah.
Because Canadians and Australians.
We need Doki Doki Cartoon Club bad.
Oh man, gosh,
someday.
Maybe somewhere down the line.
Patreon, guys, Patreon, help us out.
Yeah. We got to get some. That's a tier. You got to unlock the tier. So back to Battletoads. I'm interested in talking about level design overall because we were mentioning the things that set a beat 'em up apart from its brethren, and I think that there are definitely a few stages in this that you would not see in a common beat 'em up. And Frank had mentioned the popular reoccurring theme in some of these between the NES and SNES, and I have to assume some of the other ports, maybe Mega Drive, where you're doing that auto-scrolling
downwards
descent. Descent into.
I think it's even in the Double Dragon one.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty much like when you think of Double Dragon. Yeah, not Double Dragon, but Battletoads. You think of that and the Speed Racer one. I think
definitely. I think that's a fair assessment, at least for me.
Yeah.
And so this one even has some other stuff. Like there is a sort of a shooter.
Kind of like a Contra
stage.
shooter, like a rail Contra shooter, where you grab like the three-way and the lightning, and stuff like that. It's really cool.
And all of those guns, like for a game that only devoted one level to gunplay, like it was all very satisfying to shoot. Like I thought it worked better than anything in Gunner's Heaven. It was just weird, just fun to play and like neat to get through that. But
especially for an auto scroller, like it worked well. Like it wasn't like too tiresome.
No, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I wonder because we're playing arcade game. I haven't bothered to check in with you guys to see in what method. I have to assume everybody fired this up on some sort of MAME equivalent on a computer.
Yeah, but I threw away a quarter every time I died.
Oh, good. Oh, well, then it's legit. And actually, I didn't throw them away. What I did was I just put a bunch of them into an envelope and sent it to England. I just put England, care of David Wise.
The composer.
The composer,
yeah, the composer. And then I put in parentheses, not the cartoon guy. But no, I'm interested, hearing from you guys. Were there any of the levels that really stood out to you? And I guess I want to know, like, if you have any thoughts on like the overall pacing of the game, like as far as length goes in the context of those levels.
Well, I feel level 2 was the most standout one for me because of its theme. It was like
weird, right?
Christmas theme, snow theme. There's like these little elves, and
we should have played that for the Christmas game.
We should have.
I've had that same thought, and you guys, you have to have thought of days when you played this.
Yeah, same thing. And the music has like these little bells in the background, and like there's Rudolph is an enemy.
Arguably my favorite sprite in the game. It is like a roided out Rudolph.
A roided Rudolph. Yeah.
That brings back the Rudolph Lundgren thing from today's episode.
Which was that?
I think in that episode I mentioned I dubbed enemy Rudolph Lundgren.
Okay, all right.
But this one really takes the cake in that regard.
Yeah.
Because that level in level 3 where is like this, like you're outside of a ship, and that's the one that's like there's a porta party that opens up, and then like there's like a sound effect of
did you say porta party? Because that's what I'm going to call them from now on.
That's the name of our new band, by the way. Porta party.
Porta party. Sorry, I just like putting R's where they don't need to be. But porta potty, and then there's like a a sound effect of like a fart, and it's very like childish. And that's also the level where you grab the junk and you punch it. And it's.
Are you guys at a point in your lives right now where like where like a good fart or dick joke is like as funny as it was when you were a young kid?
Absolutely.
Like I feel like I'm mentally regressing back into my
they're
my
funnier
juvenile
now.
Years. They are funnier now, right? Like I'm not just the only one. It's like I get great joy in that. And there's like, it's weird. Is it nostalgia? I don't know.
I'm getting dumber personally, so I can't speak for you.
We're all Devo, so yeah. Okay, so we've got this weird inexplicable frozen Christmas theme. I mean, there's even a little touch in the music.
It was Christmassy.
Yeah.
Weird, right?
Definitely.
And what I liked about that level, I don't know if you guys noticed, there's like Christmas trees in the background, but there's also like, as you progress, there's signs that tell you how you're doing.
Yeah.
And there's like a sign that says like butt kicking zone.
Yeah, almost there.
Yeah, like the warnings. I like in the very background, or in the background of the first stage, like it's giving you instructions with like little digital, like double tap forward to dash or whatever the command was.
Yeah. And like I think we've all did our playthroughs around like what, an hour?
Yeah. I think I lollygagged a bit at a couple of points, and because I was having some weird controller issues, so I had to like bring up a second player.
Weird. Okay.
Yeah, and to let that player die off in order to get my controller to work right. It was bizarre. But about an hour and 10 minutes. I think there's like a speed run that's like 58 minutes or 50 something minutes. So
even on a speed run, you're still looking at like about an hour. So
yeah, that's just the nature of the beat 'em up too. I think it's going to take you a certain amount of time, regardless of how fast you go.
You still have to kill the enemies as fast as you can, right? Like the screen locks, so you can't just kind of run past them. But I'm wondering, like, man, standing up at an arcade for an hour on one game like that.
Man, that would have been rough. But also, like, in order to do that, you had deep pockets as a kid, because
this is a Noah's Arcade level experience.
Yeah.
It's like more so than, because beat 'em ups are inherently quarter crunchers.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, but other ones, even X-Men, Ninja Turtles, there are strategies. And that's not to say that you can't get through this on one credit, because people have done it because they're maniacs, they're battle maniacs, and but it's so much more unfair than your average beat 'em up, I think.
I think so too. Yeah. Well, I didn't actually see. Have you seen? Has anybody 1cc'd this?
I haven't. I've watched it. I haven't done it.
No.
Okay, I haven't. I
think there is 1cc maybe on YouTube, and I watched. It was actually at the recent AGDQ. Battletoads Arcade was.
Oh really?
Yeah, yeah. So
wow.
And I think the dude he only continued maybe once. On like a live speed run, which is pretty good. Yeah.
Did anybody keep track of how many credits you guys?
I was going to. Like, I sat down and I played up to stage 2, and then I had to stop, and then I came back and played stage. I started over again. And when I came back, I was like, man, I should really keep track of this. I wish the game did. I mean, I guess that would be a horrible idea from a business standpoint, but yeah,
you just lost.
I wish you have spent X amount of dollars of your family's.
Right,
your allowance is all gone.
I just pumped as many credits, like not as many as I could, but a ton. But I used $9.75 worth, whatever that is.
Okay, huh?
I forget what that.
I think
is
like
that, like
50 was the cap. It would take 50.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I probably continued at least 50 times.
39. Yeah, I used 39 credits.
Okay, yeah, I had to have. It had to have been close, because there was one point where I had to queue up some more, and I didn't do 50 the first time. But yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a quarter gobbler for sure. I mean, there's definitely some like boss fights. I mean, and that's all beat 'em ups. Like the place where they devour the most of your money is at those boss battles.
Yeah. Well, especially the amount of energy some things take away from you in this game is ludicrous.
Yeah.
Like if you get hit by a laser or something, then it takes away like 5 of your 12 bars.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's rough, and I love too that the game intermittently throws at you. Flies,
health.
You're a toad and you eat flies and whatever. But you
deceptively generous.
No.
Yeah. Well, no. I mean, they throw them at you often, but you can gobble them all. I never got them all, by the way. I would always miss one. But you can gobble up as many as you can get, and it does not do anything for filling up that health bar.
Maybe 2, 3 at the
maybe
most.
2 or 3. Yeah.
One thing while we're talking about level design, before we veer too far off it, I just wanted to say one thing that I found interesting is just like the levels they chose to recreate or kind of build off of from the original games were kind of surprising to me. Like there was the Arctic Caverns, because that's in the NES game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And others,
but not with a Christmas theme though.
No.
Right?
No,
it's just like it's just ice.
It's just an ice stage, but it's very similar with like the physics of sliding down the the hills and everything.
Sure.
But there's no elves.
There's
and stuff.
no, and the whole obviously is it's very different in this game, but the descent is still there. And then the thing that's funny, like, because the NES game is known for being a hodgepodge of, once you get past level 3, it's kind of like a free-for-all where they just throw as many gameplay elements as they can at you level after level.
That's true.
Where one is like a race, another is like basically the entire thing is riding a snake through like the stage. So I thought it was interesting to see what they did with this once they're faced with the need to be more straightforward.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, honestly, they don't, and it's only now that you mentioned that the NES game was that way, and I'm sitting here thinking about the snake stage and all the other stuff, and like take Arctic Caverns for instance in the arcade, it is a 2D side-scrolling game. Like you have no depth of field, like you can't move forward and backward. Which is weird, right? Like, I mean, that's very unbeat 'em up. Well, I don't want to say it's unbeat 'em up. It is unbeat 'em up.
Arcade beat 'em up.
Well, no, not even that. It's unbeat 'em up from 94.
Yeah.
Like you can go back to the late 80s and you've got games like Bad Dudes. Or whatever. I mean, we can get into an argument on like what is a beat 'em up and what's not. But I mean, there's lots of arcade games where it's like there is no foreground and background movement. But yeah, so that stage has that, and then you've got the shooter stage, and you've got the weird Street Fighter break the car mini stage.
I can't forgot about that.
With the fighter jet, which was great, and I didn't even realize I was punching, and if whether you've played Battletoads for the arcade or not, you almost have surely played a Street Fighter 2 game before, and the in Street Fighter 2 you punch the car in between fights or every few fights or whatever. I don't even recall when they space it out, but you punch the car, pieces break off, and eventually you can yield no more results. Like you need to move on to another part of the car to smash that up, to break it off. And I guess this game works the same way, but the sound effects and the visual cue for how that works, it wasn't very obvious to me. And so like I'm bashing away on this thing, and I'm like, man, like it caught on fire, but like it's nothing else is happening to it. And so I missed out. Did anyone, because you only get one chance to do this. It's so weird.
I completely demolished that thing. It was beautiful. Like at the end, the person sitting in the seat flies toward the screen.
Yeah, you kick them in the screen.
Lots of that in this game, and I love that about Battletoads is like that whole, I mean, there's some of that in the Ninja Turtles arcade games too, like flinging a foot soldier towards you.
This is to the next level for sure.
For sure. This definitely outdoes Ninja Turtles in that small regard, but
yeah.
And they love it too. Like after every level, like the toad will jump towards the screen as like the
oh yeah,
that's so good. One thing I noticed it was just bringing back the 90s thing, but I think it's Rash that has the sunglasses, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah.
At the end of the level, he does like this little hump. It's so good.
Yes, he does. It's funny you mentioned Rash, and I was curious, like as you guys play through this game, it does a thing with beat 'em ups that I like, and I think that it should have been some sort of law, like law of the land, like a mandatory firing squad execution, like kind of a thing where you can pick between the players. And some games like lock you in, like you play The Simpsons. Well, I don't know. Is The Simpsons one of those ones where you can, like, depending on which joystick you've grabbed, that's it?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, it's
I think so.
Yeah. And well, X-Men's definitely like that, right? Like you need.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on where you stand on the cabinet.
Right, and that may have very well been the case in the actual arcade cabinet. I don't know about the MAME ROM, but you can switch between Zitz, Rash, and Pimple. And while there's not really like a difference in terms of play style in the way that you might find in a Final Fight game, where like Hagar and Guy and Cody
play differently,
play very differently. You still get the cool visual differences.
Yeah, they have different or I guess combo enders, I guess you would call them.
Yeah, so I like that, and I guess so. To to get around to it, I'm curious as to who you guys chose to play with the most, if you can recall, or was it even across the board? You would just switch every time you died, or I don't know. I'm just curious.
I think we might have all mostly done the same, just from talking beforehand.
Yeah.
Want to do it? 1, 2, 3. Pimple.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. Rash.
Yeah.
Well,
okay. All right. Interesting.
okay.
So
okay.
we did
Never
not.
mind.
Yeah.
It was just Frank and I
Yeah.
that did Pimple then.
So Joseph, maybe we'll start with you. So like, what was it about playing with Rash that appealed to you the most?
Once he started doing, I realized he could do the football helmet thing. You know,
That's Pimple.
Oh, is it Pimple? Okay, then I played as Pimple. I can't keep it straight.
Okay.
The brown one.
Yeah. So that's
Pimple,
definitely Pimple. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, basically, once I saw Pimple's football helmet move, that's
You're
just very
sold.
visually appealing to me. So I stuck
I would
with him.
definitely agree. He's second favorite of the bunch. Zitz was my first favorite. I think Zitz is maybe a less interesting character overall. He doesn't really have anything visually that sets him apart from, like Pimple's a giant brown one. Rash has a red wristband, or there's something red on him, and then he has sunglasses, and then Zitz is just kind of like
A dude.
He's the dude. He's
Yeah.
like the Leonardo of the group. And but he arguably has like the best sprite animations of the bunch, in my opinion, especially if you give in to the gore aspect of Battletoads and give in to your inner 90s child, because he has the drill.
Yeah.
He's got the axe. And that drill is like really satisfying. I love a good beat 'em up game where once you've downed an enemy, you can get over them, get on top of them, and start like ground and pound. I don't know, something really satisfying to me about that. And then the drill just looks cool.
Well, to be fair, Pimple's ground and pound is he turns his fist into a anvil essentially, and he crushes his face into dust. So.
Yeah, I mean that's good, and he's also got his kick, if I'm not mistaken, is like a stone tomahawk.
Yeah.
So that's cool too, if that's your thing. But
Well, my thinking was like he's pretty much the Hagar of the
he's the
group,
big
so
boy.
Definitely, and that he's the one I started off
figured.
with. He was the first one I went to, and and like it was only after like going, okay, I've seen enough Pimple. This game's kind of long, and cycled my way through that I decided to go with Zitz. And then once you've kind of seen everything they all have to offer,
So
eventually you just land on one and stick with it.
I've only played with Pimple. Do the other ones play faster? Like, did they attack?
No,
they
not
all play
really.
The same?
No,
It's all the same.
I like Pimple because he's the biggest of the three in terms of, and he doesn't play any slower or faster, but sprite wise, he is a little more in line with most of the other enemy sprites. And so that makes for visually like a better dynamic, and it doesn't feel like you're just a little guy beating up on big guys, which is cool in its own right, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. The bloody drill gun, the blood spray. He definitely Zitz makes the biggest mess.
As far as I know, and I might be mistaken here, but the story of the first or the Super Nintendo game is that one of the toads, and it's either Zitz or Rash, and I can't remember which one, gets abducted by the queen while he's on a date. And then, and then it's up to the two other ones to go save him. So that's why I always played Pimple when I was a kid, because he was the biggest one out of the two. There was only like two of them.
Oh yeah, and on the NES there is no Zitz, right? It's just Rash and Pimple.
Oh really?
Yeah, right. There's just the two of them.
No, I don't think so.
Really? Oh man, I'm gonna have to revisit.
Tune in next time. Doki Doki Game Club. We play Battletoads on the NES.
But no, like on the man, as I was playing the arcade game, I could have swore that even though the story had three of them, that one of them was missing. And so for Frank to tell me that now, that kind of reinforces that recollection. But maybe I am just thinking of the SNES.
No, he's there. I'm reading the plot. Professor T-Bird and the three Battletoads, Rash, Zitz, and Pimple, are escorted by Princess Angelica to her home planet using the spirit craft the Vulture. When Pimple and Angelica decide to take a leisurely trip on Pimple's flying craft, they are ambushed and captured by Dark Queen's ship. Oh, it's just the same story. The Garangata. So yeah, you can only play as two, I think.
Huh. Yeah, I don't know.
On the NES as well. Huh.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, I definitely don't remember there being multiples, but maybe they didn't even really look that different. They were both just kind of...
Well, the one's
Zitzy.
brown and one's green, I think.
Okay. Did the one? I don't know. I'm gonna have to pause recording right now just to like go look at this Battletoads NES. I'm mostly interested in seeing if you can identify with the sprites if like one of them has sunglasses on. And
I think the one with sunglasses gets abducted.
Okay, all right, yeah,
that's what because of his cool shades.
Well, obviously.
Well, the guy with the shades gets the girls, so
that's true. He was on a date, with the queen. Okay, well, I don't know. Anyone have any other thoughts about?
No.
I mean, what can you really say about like the game mechanics of a beat 'em up? If you've played one, you've kind of played them all. I will say, as far as that goes, you just mentioned, did any of them play different from any other? And no, you're treated to visual differences.
Yeah.
And I guess that's kind of where the replay value is. But in games like Final Fight and specifically in games like Streets of Rage, which is arguably the best console beat 'em up. I don't know if you guys feel that way as well, but, you had all these characters to choose from in Streets of Rage, for instance, and they, different enemies different characters would deal damage in different ways. Like, you would have a heavier hit by one, or
faster.
Oftentimes in these games where you chose the female character, you would be faster. You always had that guy that was kind of right down the middle. And I feel like that would have really given this game a bit more legs. If nothing else, it would have been more fun to switch between them. And I probably would have settled on one after the first couple.
They're designed that way. They should have been like the one could have been the middle one, and then the other one could have been the speedy one, and Pimple could have been the hard one. Like, there's no reason why they couldn't have done that.
I wonder if there's not some sort of like arcade or video game developer logic with that, where it's like, man, so if we make this one character and he's like the biggest and he does the most damage, people are going to get sore about
people only want to play him. And then
or whatever. I mean, I don't know, was everybody a Hagar guy when you were playing Final Fight as a kid?
I was a guy.
Okay, so I mean, that's the thing. That's fun though, because like, I would always go with Hagar, and if you went with Guy,
I wasn't a Hagar guy either. I was never into like the slow characters, the bigger, beefier dudes. Like,
I just always felt like I was doing more damage with that guy, and it was like when we would do co-op, I would be like, I'm
getting the points.
Big damage. I'm the guy that's doing the most of the damage. I'm doing the heavy lifting, and you little boys are just swatting at the guys. But
a couple things I want to mention real quick. First of all, I want to know what your all's favorite boss was.
Oh.
Because I have a choice.
Okay. I can tell you my least favorite.
Okay.
Which was your least favorite?
Well, the Robo Rat.
That's my favorite because I
wasn't able to avoid any kicks.
By the way, it's Scuzz the Robo Rat. Thank you very much.
Okay. The kicks really kick you. Like, they really throw you across the screen.
Okay, as far as boss design goes, he's nothing special and he's really cheap like every other boss in this game. But I really appreciate, once again, the attention to detail of every time you knock him, a piece of him off, like he keeps going, and at the end you think it's going to be over when you knock half of him off, and you see the rat.
It's just a mech.
But then you knock it, basically blow his legs up too, and then he's crawling around on his knees.
It's true. He's so like I don't even think he has knees. I think he's just like a torso, like a stump that like bounces around. I mean, I think visually, I think that one was definitely a standout boss. I'm looking at the names of the other ones, and I feel bad saying this, but like, I don't even remember what Big Blog was.
Big Blog was
the bouncing one.
Yeah, it gets really big.
No, did not like that one. Looked cool. Like, that's the thing. All of these enemies, like, conceptually are cool. Like King of Karnath, King of Snakes.
That one was my favorite. Name. That was I liked his. He was kind of like a quarter one where he would take forever to die without seeing any progress on how close he was to dying. But I like that gimmick that he was like in the background and he would come to the foreground, and the toad is cool. The toad sprite changes because he's facing the background. I don't know. It's cool.
And you also ripped his head off at the end.
Yes, absolutely kicks his head right off.
And that's the only, like, I did it, and so that's stage 2, and like I said, I had to do it twice, 1 and 2, I went through twice, and if I beat him, and then I needed to go to the restroom, and I was like, well, okay, now's a good time to do it, and so I didn't want to pause the game or figure out whatever, and I got up and went to the restroom, and I came back a couple minutes later, and like, you're still just standing there. Like you can't complete that stage until you kick his head.
Oh wow! Okay,
so
which I thought was really cool. Yeah.
I noticed there wasn't any countdown timer, was there?
No.
In this game.
Yeah.
That's
And
so
that's
weird.
different,
like,
right?
Yeah,
that's totally different for an arcade.
Yeah.
and there's no
beat 'em up.
no point system either.
I hadn't noticed that. But
Well, you get the death count at the end.
Yeah.
that's true.
At
the
the
end of
end,
each
you get
level,
like
that's
I guess you get.
And you actually get ranked on your completion time.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing that I want to mention because it fits with the lore of our show, but the snake is a ball monster. All of his body,
that's
it's
true.
all balls.
Yes.
Not only is the snake a ball monster, but when the flies appear on screen,
your tongue.
that same appearance of the tongue exactly is like
I thought that looked really weird. Actually,
It's like
It
that
did
in
look weird.
every game, though. That's what it.
I think sprite-based stuff. It must have just been impossible to make like a straight line that didn't look.
Well, I think the thing
really
is that
wonky.
you can grab these things whenever, wherever, and it's just easier to make these balls go
Stretch, yeah.
go in different ways as opposed to like try to pick.
That makes
but
sense.
they're like too thick. It was weird. Yeah.
This is where we found out Brian was disgusted by the toad. Tongue.
Yeah. That's a biological non-canon.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember the big I forget which stage that was, maybe the Queen's Mansion, maybe the ship where those balls were rolling down.
Oh yeah,
You
yeah.
had this
that's
like
Queen's Mansion.
Queen's Mansion.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought that was really I thought that was really interesting and unique. You had this like three-dimensional thing you had to react to, and you had plenty of time to react, but against these things.
Yeah.
And
I thought that was just very clever way.
It's funny you say you have plenty of time to react to it, but man, I must have gotten flattened like a million.
Oh, no, I
probably
definitely
spent
did.
$15 fake money on that.
I
I
think
definitely did, but I thought it was fair, even though like I was messing up.
Yeah.
my favorite part though is after the balls come down and then like a bunch of rats just come like bouncing down the hallway.
yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
they're
That's
just kind of like kamikazing in and like, oh yeah, let's,
Yeah.
oh man, this game just is full of just okay. It's just full of. I feel like the developers sat down and they're like, okay, what couldn't we do in the other games, and let's just chalk this game full of it. And,
And have we mentioned, by the way, the fact that you can pick up one of the rats' machine guns and just start shooting them all in the face?
pretty good. Pretty good.
I was thinking about that. What did any other games let you shoot a gun?
No,
Punisher
I don't know
did,
about
I think.
I don't know about a gun, but I mean, you were able to pick up weapons and the
Oh, you mean
original, I guess.
Battletoads games? Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I was like, Punisher did. Other games have had guns.
yeah, Contra. Have you not played Contra?
Yeah.
It's all guns. Yeah.
But that was a measure of violence. I don't think maybe it would have. I don't know.
I don't
passed
know.
in the-
Yeah.
the-
It's
the
too bad they
console
didn't go whole
versions.
hog on it. Pardon the pun.
Yeah, they're just
but
laser. It would have been cool if the bullets,
It is just laser.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been rad if it was bullets and like blood splatters and stuff.
Like a
Really just go all
shotgun.
out.
Laser Uzi.
Yeah.
they
right.
need to make a new one. That would be so good. Like a new.
Well, I think that Battletoads, it's interesting you bring that up, and I wanted to mention it earlier. So you said that there was Killer Instinct. They had Battletoads
And they're also in Shovel
characters.
Knight.
Shovel Knight had them. yeah.
That's the other thing I wanted to mention was like if you had the Microsoft whatever it was,
Yeah.
was it Xbox?
Xbox,
or
I think.
Yeah.
Windows was there a Windows
Oh.
version of Shovel Knight?
No, the Xbox one.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, if Microsoft and Rare, in cahoots with each other, and
I think Microsoft
Yeah,
bought
they-
Rare, as far as I know.
okay,
Yeah.
well, that
They
explains
did.
it
They
then.
did at
That
one
would
point.
make
Yeah,
sense.
I'm not sure if
Yeah.
they still own them or
Yeah.
not, but they definitely bought them at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why the
And-
the Rare collection or whatever is only on the Xbox. Like you can't get it on anything else.
Right.
Yeah.
That explains that. There was a couple of years ago too, where if you they had released the Battletoads NES soundtrack on vinyl.
Oh yeah.
And I picked that one up as a fan of soundtrack records, and they had man, it's so good, and that's the reason I brought the internet meme thing up that I thought maybe you could clarify.
Oh, yeah.
I had it when I got it. Do you know the history behind the meme?
As far as I know, yeah, there might be some more that I
Okay.
might
Oh, the
not.
calling up GameStop to
Yeah.
ask if Battletoads is out?
Yeah, so the when you open up so it's a gatefold record jacket, and I'm sure even if you don't know what that is, you can imagine. You can open it up, and in the middle, when you open it up, it plays music from the game.
Oh,
Which I
really?
thought was really cool. Yeah, like a Christmas card.
Oh, wow.
Or like a high tech birthday card or
Yeah.
whatever. And so it does that, and then like the interior of the gatefold jacket has like the Dark Queen like on a bed,
Okay.
and she's like on a telephone like calling GameStop. And like when I saw it, I had no idea what that meant. And there was a kid that I worked with at the time, and I showed him the record, and I said, "What is this? Like, explain this to me." And like he explained it, and it was one of the moments in my life where I felt the most old. Where I was like, "Hey, Junior, come here.
What does this mean?
Explain this to Grandpa."
Why is this woman calling
people
GameStop?
Listening, Frank, maybe you can fill us in as our resident, as our juniorist member, and resident internet culture authoritarian.
I call myself a meme lord. If you
a meme lord, sorry, not to be confused with an edgelord.
No, I'm not an edgelord. Well, essentially, what happened is I would say probably like 2007, maybe 2008. There was this thing where I think it was basically probably 4chan, but they would end up calling GameStop and asking for copies of Battletoads for no particular reason, like just to annoy the people working at GameStop.
Yeah. Do you have Battletoads? Do you have Battletoads?
Yeah. Do you have Battletoads? And it just became its thing for no real reason. Like,
it's really funny to me.
It is.
Like, when he explained it, I was like confused, and then like I thought about it for a second, and then I was like, God, that's really funny. To hell with GameStop.
Because I can assume like the first couple of calls you would get as a GameStop employee, you're like, oh, let me check in the database. No, we don't have any NES Battletoads. I'm sorry. But then after like 75 calls in a day, you probably go like lose your mind. But why Battletoads? I don't know. Like,
why not?
Yeah.
That's
funny.
really
Just double down the
absurdity.
absurdity.
Yeah.
Why not?
There was another old kind of meme with Battletoads about they would post a picture of the box art and they say, what is this game? and people were like, it's Battletoads.
And there you have it. Yeah. And there, my friends, is internet humor.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's oh man. Yeah.
So,
oh no, sorry.
So
they were calling to pre-order Battletoads. That's what it was.
That's it. Yeah. Can I pre-order Battletoads? I think that's what. So Dark Queen, I definitely recommend looking this up, and maybe I'll take a picture of it and post it on our Twitter account for people that want to check it out. But she's asking about pre-ordering, and that did.
Oh wow! I said 2007. I was right on the box. Right on the box.
Nice.
Right on the right in the
That's
green.
why you're
cash,
a meme lord.
Cash on the green box.
That's why. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to earn that meme lord status, so it's very important.
Yeah, on September 12th to 14th, 2007, Anonymous targeted over 40 GameStop stores making prank calls requesting to pre-order Battletoads 2, Battletoads for the Wii, and other odd requests.
It was anonymous, as in the hacker group?
Yeah, because Anonymous before the hacker group was just a bunch of kids on 4chan.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, before we sort of pull all this together and share our final thoughts, I wanted to mention, we kept cracking jokes about David. We kept cracking wise about David Wise. I just want to mention this guy's, the soundtrack composer's storied history as a guy working in the music industry. He's made some great soundtracks. Yeah. Marble Madness has a great theme in that. A Nightmare on Elm Street is one of my favorite NES soundtracks. Period. Donkey Kong Country, and then Wizards and Warriors.
RC Pro-Am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
Double Dare. Oh my god. Yeah, he did some really good ones. They were all like all licensed stuff too, right? Like Beetlejuice.
Not all of them, but
do you count Donkey Kong Country as being a license?
No, I'm talking about the NES games, but like afterwards. Yeah,
quite a lot of them are. Yeah.
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 Interesting stuff.
What do you guys think about his Battletoads arcade music?
I mean, it's fair.
Not terribly memorable.
Yeah. To me, I always remember the songs from the NES and the SNES, maybe because I played them so much as a kid. But like I was like the da 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 on like the SNES one, like that one just it's on my brain.
You know what? The credits theme is really memorable, I think, for their arcade game. I think it might be the same for the other Battletoads games or some of them.
Yeah.
But other than that, like I don't know, I get so worn out by the fake chugga chugga guitars.
Yeah, the butt rock.
Yeah, just like real bad arcade butt rock, and like I think David Wise is pretty hit or miss, and this is mostly a miss.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know. I mean, the four that you chose, or whatever that is, 4 or 5 that you chose to reference in the notes here. I mean, I all of those have very strong melodies. And
those are great. That's why I put them there. Those are great soundtracks.
I don't know about you, but I got kind of a Shadowrun vibe out of the bass.
Yeah.
The bass in I think the first level or something.
Yeah.
Buzzy synth bass. Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Yeah, I'll try to pick some good ones to use as transitions here in the show. Hopefully people hear what it is.
For sure. Okay, well, let's take a little break here, and we come back, we'll wrap all this up. Okay, so we have had a nice chat about Battletoads, and now comes the time of the show where it's we're ready to pull it all in, and I would love to hear from each of you what your final thoughts were. So as we tend to do, I'd like to hear kind of your favorite detail of the game and maybe your least favorite part of the game. So let's start this time let's start with Frank.
All right. For me, the best part was seeing all my favorite characters and kind of game in a more higher res version of it, because I think the what really appealed to me when I first saw this was like, oh my god, this, I guess it would be a 64-bit or a 32-bit I guess version of Battletoads, because I played the 16-bit version on the SNES a lot, so I was like, oh cool, and then the music has better samples, even though the music is not as good, but I was like, okay, this is like a one-up, and I didn't know about the gore until I played it and stuff like that, which was a +1, so that I guess that would be it. And I guess the negative would be not having enough variety on the characters. I think that because we talked about it earlier, and it kind of made me go, oh yeah, that would have been great, having 3 different type of characters with different kind of moves and speeds and attack strength. I think that would have really hit it home. That would have been great. And I would probably give it, as an arcade beat 'em up and as a huge Battletoads fan, I'd probably give it 3.5 dominatrix in black out of 5.
All right, very good. Brian, let's hear from you next.
Yeah, it was definitely visually impressive. I just wasn't really impressed by the gameplay. I'm gonna have to look at the 1cc run to see what I was doing wrong. Like, it seemed like there's some very, very cheap shots.
Yeah.
In that, but so yeah, I would say yeah. I guess that would probably be the positive and negative. I'll give it 2.5 flies out of 5.
Okay. And Joseph, what do you got?
For pros, I love how grody it is. From rats getting caught dumping to vomiting and just the absurd amount of cartoon violence and gore, this game really realizes the potential of Battletoads to me.
Yeah, definitely.
For cons, it's just abysmal levels of quarter crunching. Like, I think if this had been a little more balanced, it could be more of a classic beat 'em up. That you'd want to play over and over again, but for now it's stuck firmly in Noah's Arcade. And I would give this bad boy 3 toilet tanking rat splatters out of 5.
Nice. Well, I guess that leaves me, and I like beat 'em ups. Some beat 'em ups I would say I love beat 'em ups. And this one falls kind of in the middle of the road overall for me. I can definitely think of many worse, and I can think of quite a few that outshine it. I'm going to say the negative thing that really stands out in my mind about this game overall is kind of just the length. And it's weird to say that because I like more or less all of the stages. I mean, there's some parts that linger a little too long, but I can't think of any stage that I would have pulled out necessarily. But ultimately, I mean, even just an hour, it didn't take us long to play this. I had no desire to go back to it after this, I don't think. But for a beat 'em up, like you get that fatigue pretty quick, unless the game is just completely, firing on all cylinders, and this game just to me fell a little bit short of that. But as far as my pro, I I like the overall attitude of Battletoads. I liked it as a kid. Watching that cartoon today, like, I was like, man, that's fun. It's just fun. It's just good, lighthearted fun. And so, yeah, I would say just the overall aesthetics of the Ninja Turtles ripoff that could, like, I mean, like we talked about earlier, there's just so many other ripoffs and like just the franchise overall. So, and I would say that this game, out of all the Battletoads games, arguably the best.
Yeah, I would say so too.
If not, I would say it certainly represents the franchise in a way that is kind of at the peak. And
I would definitely call this the baby's first Battletoad if you can get your hands on it before the other ones.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's easy. It's easy in a modern day comparison.
But it's not for kids.
No, it's not for kids. Yeah,
right?
no.
Yeah, let's slap a warning on that one. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to rate this game 3 out of 5 homoerotic toad ticklers. Yeah, that's where we're at with that. So if you want to play this game yourself, I don't think that there's any, I'd say that maybe there's a gamer moral gray area with emulating old arcade games, but unless you can find the arcade somewhere magically, some sort of strange Zoltan machine infested carnival somewhere. You're going to have to do what you can to get your hands on it. That said, actually, it looks as though Joseph may have found some info from 2013 was probably the last time this looks.
That's the most recent sale I could find for the actual original arcade PCB.
Yeah. And that's like the board, like the board that you would insert into an arcade, the guts for the arcade cabinet. So, if collecting arcades is your thing, that last time that was sold, it looked to be about $230.
That's not too bad.
Not too bad. If you listen to our show, and you know how expensive some of these games can get.
It's one of the cheaper games we've played.
For sure. And so you've got actually have a good modern option for playing Battletoads arcade specifically. And in addition to that, you can get a bunch of other stuff. But you have to, unfortunately, own an Xbox One. But Rare Replay
Brandon just dunked on Xbox One.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Our Microsoft sponsors are going to pull immediately. But so there's something called Rare Replay, and I can't tell you comprehensively what's on it, but I can definitely tell you that Battletoads Arcade is on it, and it goes for about $30. So if you have an Xbox One and you're interested in playing this game legit, I definitely recommend checking that out. So I would say, without further ado, that it's time for
Doki Doki Powerline.
That's right, it's Doki Doki Powerline, where we plug you into the source for the hottest gamer tips and tricks. The winner of this episode's Powerline Pro Tip comes from Princess Angelica herself. And she writes in with a lovely, albeit classist, suggestion that my good friend, Mr. Joseph Lester, is going to recite to us.
All right, she says, to succeed in Battletoads Arcade, you must have extremely, superbly deep pockets. Roll up those quarters and go to town, rich boy.
Indeed. Thank you, Princess Angelica, for writing in, or having one of your many minions write it in. So that brings us to the point where we are ready to announce next episode's game. Episode 13 falls to Brian. So Mr. Grogan, can you please tell us what game you've selected?
Okay, so for my next game, I'm going to choose Kirby's Adventure for the NES.
Okay, and that concludes episode 12 of Doki Doki Game Club. Before we slurp up the rest of these flies and call it a day, I want to thank my zip-poppin' partners in grime for joining me today. Who are you guys, and where can people find you? Let's start with Frank.
My name is Frank Martin. You can find me on Twitter at Heos_IO and on Twitch at Heos_.
And let's do Brian next.
Yes, I'm Brian Grogan, a.k.a. Ken O. You can find me on Twitter at Ken O Shinobi.
And last but not least, Mr. Joseph Lester.
Oh, you just said it. I'm Joseph Lester, baby. You can find me on Twitter at Moldilux, MOLDILOX. My website is subhumanzoids.com, and you can and should read my most likely Battletoads-inspired comic, Big Dumb Fighting Idiots, there. And listen to me and my friend Kanan on our podcast, Subhumancast.
Yes, indeed. And if Twitter is your thing and you'd like to follow me personally, I am Genocide over there. That's DJINNOCIDE. And you can follow the show on Twitter at Doki Doki GC. In addition to that, we're practically on every other social network online as well, so search for Doki Doki Game Club all across the World Wide Web, or head on over to dokidokigameclub.com for further details. And thank you once again to everyone who continues to tweet about us using hashtag DokiDokiGC, or shares a link to the show on Facebook. You're the Professor T-Bird to our rat-kicking team of toads. And last but not least, we have a Patreon, so if you have a couple of bucks you can spare and would like to show us your support in that manner, you can head on over to patreon.com/Doki Doki Game Club, where we have some pretty neat rewards available to anyone interested in supporting us in that fashion. So on behalf of Brian, Frank, Joseph, and myself, thanks for listening, and until next time, adios, Battletoads.